It's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King
And I'm all
of Glory
fired up and ready to go. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was imprisoned for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him. He said, I looked, there was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now as this broadcast goes forth. That is what this show is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody, all my faithful listeners and viewers on Facebook Live all across the fruited plain. AndyWhite is here. You are so welcome. You are about to hear the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. That's what this show is all about. Hey, do me a favor, if you are listening, please visit me at my Open Up the Doors Facebook page at www.facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. And I am streaming live on Facebook Live. Join the conversation over there on Facebook Live. For those of you who are joining in there on Facebook Live, please share this. It's so important. Facebook is all about sharing the posts. That's how the audience grows exponentially. So I would appreciate it so very much. I really would if you would share this stream and invite people to open up the doors right now. You can also email me at ajwhite777@icloud.com. That's ajwhite777@icloud.com. And I want to get right to it because I have a lot of stuff on the plate and on the agenda for today. I believe today's broadcast is going to be a real eye-opener for many people. But before I get to the heart of what I need to share, what I want to share today, I need to set it all up first. As you all know, of course, Donald Trump last week, President Trump, officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital has been predictably condemned across the Muslim world, as well as among Western liberal political elites. In fact, just today, ISIS put forth another threat. And one thing about ISIS's threats is they usually make good on them. But just today, Reuters released that the Islamic State has threatened attacks on U.S. soil in retaliation for the Trump administration's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. One of the ISIS's social media accounts had reported this. In the message released by ISIS, it said, quote, "Wait for us and ISIS in Manhattan." The group said it would carry out these operations, and they showed images on their tweets or whatever they released of New York's Times Square, and they did this a couple of weeks ago as well. Before that, that guy that tried to he tried to blow up people the other day. That was ISIS inspired, and he said that terrorist this past week said he was doing it in retaliation for President Trump's official recognition of Jerusalem. But ISIS today said, quote, "We will do more operations, more ops in your land until the final hour, and we will burn you with flames of war, which you started in Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Syria, Afghan. Just you wait," it said. The recognition of your dog Trump, that's their words, not mine, the recognition of your dog Trump of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel will make us recognize explosives as the capital in your country. So ISIS has not gone away, in spite of the fact that of all the hoopla that, we've gained back the territory. And we've gained back the territory, yes. But where is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi? I've been wondering that for a while, but I won't digress with that because I don't want to talk about that or him right now. But right after Donald Trump last week announced his official recognition, United States' official recognition of Jerusalem, there was, of course, I shouldn't say of course, but there was, and this is New York. I mean, New York almost has more Jews in it than Israel does. But there was an anti-Israel protest in New York City the other day following the announcement on Jerusalem, where the protesters were calling for violence against Jews and the complete and violent destruction of the state of Israel. This wasn't happening in some Mideastern city. This was happening in New York, where they were calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. And as far as Hamas and the rest of the Islamic world is concerned, the quote-unquote peace process goes something like this. We will destroy Israel piece by piece, one piece at a time. That's what they mean by a peace process, my friends. Make no doubt about it. Make no mistakes about it. The intent to destroy Israel completely really is, not really, most absolutely is part of Hamas's platform. But the intent to destroy Israel is completely a firm policy of the Islamic nations that are arrayed against Israel today, not to be compromised by any deceptive, quote-unquote, peace process, except to tear Israel apart piece by piece, as I just said. The world, and especially those on the political left, they're trying to make Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel all about Trump. Leaders from Britain, France, Germany, Italy, they all joined in the chorus of condemnation for Trump's decision. According to them, his decision to do this has destroyed the peace process. But I shared a lot about that last week on last week's edition of Open Up the Doors. I talked about how the peace process really was destroyed a long time ago, when Yasser Arafat declined it in the Camp David Accords back in 2000. I won't reiterate that. You can listen to last week's broadcast about that. But assessing all of that, I want to say some things here, because this isn't about Trump's decision. Everybody's talking about Trump's decision and what a buffoon he is, or how reckless he is, or how he doesn't know the political situation. It isn't about Trump's decision, folks. Jerusalem is God's decision. Donald Trump did not make Jerusalem the capital of Israel. I know a lot of people on the planet seem to think that Donald Trump made Jerusalem the capital of Israel, but he did not do that. He simply recognized the reality of it. It wasn't Trump's decision. It was God's decision. And God made his decision over 3,000 years ago. Psalm 132 says, "For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it." God, Zion, Israel, Jerusalem is the apple of his eye. He says here in Psalm 132, I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I will clothe her priests with salvation. I can go somewhere with that. I don't want to digress. There I will make the horn of David grow. Psalm 132:17 is so important. There I will make the horn of David grow. The horn means the government. There I will make the government of David grow, and I will prepare a lamp for my anointed. Yes, that's what Jerusalem is. Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Jerusalem is the throne of the soon-to-return true Messiah of Israel and salvation of all men. Jesus' throne will be in Mount Zion. Jesus' throne will be in Jerusalem in that day. Why do the nations rage, and why do the people make a tumult? Because of Jerusalem, where the horn of David will grow. In a stupendously, and I'm going to stress that, a stupendously stupid article that the leftist Israeli paper Haaretz titled, this was the title of this article, in Haaretz. It is an Israeli newspaper, and it's leftist. But the heading of the article, the headline was, Trump's Jerusalem Syndrome. Whose end of days Messiah does he think he is? And the article is really a diatribe against everything that Trump did, and even kind of mocking those of us who believe in biblical eschatology. But the article says this: the president just gave Jerusalem to the evangelicals for Christmas as a capital of their very own. Well, actually, the new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven will ultimately be our capital. And when Jesus returns, it will be the horn of David. It will be the government of David. So, I mean, it's not that it's our very own capital, but in some ways, okay, I'll give them that a little bit. Of course, they're just doing it in a very mocking, condescending sort of way. But in the meantime, until the new Jerusalem comes down from heaven, Jesus will occupy the present one in due season. So hold on to your seats there, people at Haaretz, however you pronounce that Israeli paper. But the snarky article, and it was a snarky article. I have it posted on the Open Up the Doors page, by the way. But the snarky article goes on to say, after all, who else but Trump could make the apocalypse great again? Who can make the apocalypse great again? But just whose Messiah, here's where it gets really interesting in that article, but just whose Messiah is Trump hastening? Is it the fundamentalist Israeli vision of a return to a Jewish kingdom and priesthood reminiscent of the Old Testament? Or is it the evangelical belief in the return of Jesus Christ and the conversion of all the Jews to born-again Christian doctrine and faith? It's all of the above, my friends. Let me be perfectly clear, okay? I want to make myself perfectly clear. To all the hand-wringers and for all those who want to mock or to try and figure out and speculate exactly what the reasons were for Trump to make this declaration, I'm going to give you some inside info here. It is irrelevant. What were the reasons for Trump doing it? They're irrelevant. They are completely and utterly irrelevant. Because politicians are but pawns. The geopolitical maneuverings of nations are nothing more or less than the geoprophetical determinations of the living God. Because all that has been written concerning Jerusalem will be fulfilled. You know, my friends, I was thinking about this as I was reading these articles, and I'm seeing all the maneuverings of the nations. This world, I was thinking of this analogy. This world is God's chessboard. And thinking about that analogy of a chess game, of a chessboard. You know, the devil's trying to play chess with God. And he's obviously going to lose. We know that. But there's only one king, and that's Jesus. There's only one king on this chessboard. It's Jesus. And there is only one queen. And it's not Mary, I will hasten to say. It's the bride of Christ. The bride of Christ is the queen of heaven. And to be sure, to keep up with the analogy, I don't want to press the analogy too far, but there are knights and there are rooks and there are what they call bishops on the chessboard as well. And I was thinking about what could they possibly represent? Well, the bishop obviously represents the institutional church and religion. And on the chessboard, they're located on either side of the king and the queen. Again, I don't want to press the analogy too far. But did you know that in medieval Europe, the bishop was second in line with the king and the queen? I actually did not know that. I did a little bit of brushing up on my chess jargon. I used to play chess when I was younger. I used to play chess pretty often. I wasn't incredibly good at playing chess, but I was decent. I could hold my own. That's why I started thinking about this whole idea of chess and what's going on. What's going on in the world that God is doing. The knights on the chessboard, they're warriors, the knights. There are some people in the kingdom of God, they're just warriors. There's warriors in the natural, and there's warriors in the spiritual. And then there's this thing in chess called the rook. It looks like a castle. Now, what's interesting about that is the very word Zion is derived from a Hebrew word that means castle. So in my analogy of God's chessboard, I'm kind of saying that the castle could represent the New Jerusalem, the city whose builder and maker is God. And then there are the pawns. As you know, the pawns, they're the only pieces that stand in the front row. And there are more of them than any other piece on the board. But they're not really there to protect. They just stand in the front row and they make moves. And politicians are but pawns. I'll say it again. The geopolitical maneuverings of nations are nothing more or less than the geoprophetical determinations of the living God. Behold, Isaiah said, the nations are as a drop in the bucket. They're counted as a small dust on the scales. Look, he lifts up his eyes. He lifts up his eyes to the isles as a very little thing. All the nations before him are as nothing, Isaiah said. They are counted by him less than nothing and worthless. Folks, this world is passing away. That's the bottom line. Where I'm going with this right now. I've seen so much hand-wringing and so much speculation and so much what is Trump doing and what does this mean? Folks, this world is passing away. And if we really, really understood the prophetic times that we live in, these things that are happening would be so much clearer to us as to why they are happening and why they must happen. It's not about Trump. It's not about America, for that matter. It's about God's eternal purpose, which he is accomplishing. This past week there was a meeting, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit, of the OIC in Turkey. But Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said the other day that America's role in the Middle East peace process, quote, from now on, after Donald Trump's unilateral decision to recognize Israel, is null and void. We are no longer to be accepted into the Middle East peace process, according to Mahmoud Abbas. Good! Ha! Can we stop sending them billions of dollars in aid now, by the way? Addressing the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. Abbas stated that while the Palestinians remain committed to peace, baloney, Washington can no longer be accepted as a fair negotiator. Oh, you mean like Hamas and Hezbollah? They're fair negotiators? They're yeah, right, sure, okay. According to Abbas, Trump's announcement was a crime that threatens world peace. And Abbas called on the United Nations. I'm going to say something, and you got to remember what I'm saying here, because it's going to play into something I'm going to say later. But Abbas called on the United Nations to take charge of the Mideast peace process and revamp it with a new mechanism. Let me repeat that. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, whatever they call themselves, he's asking the United Nations to take charge of the Mideast peace process. The pawns are being moved around on the chessboard, my friends. Take charge of the Mideast peace process and revamp it with a new mechanism. As he said, for Washington is no longer fit for the task. And he added that new measures are needed to protect the identity of Jerusalem, which is claimed by both the Israelis and the Palestinians. Buckle up, folks. Buckle up. It's only just starting. When I come back, I'm going to have more about the OIC meeting in Psalm 83, so stick around. Oh, come, let us adore him. Great, great version of Oh, Come, All Ye Faithful by Casting Crowns. Welcome back. AndyWhite here. You are listening to Open Up the Doors, the fusion of heart, mind, and soul here on Faith FM. WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague. WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. So I want to get into the meat and potatoes of what I want to share today. As I mentioned last week, Turkish President Erdogan called for a summit of the main pan-Islamic body of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. And this summit took place yesterday in Istanbul. And it was an emergency summit. It was an emergency meeting to discuss the U.S. moves to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And one of the things I shared last week, and I'll mention again today, what's really interesting about this is that Turkey right now currently holds the chairmanship of the OIC. Again, what is the OIC? For those of you who might not know, it is an international Muslim organization. It consists of 57 member states with a collective population of over 1.6 billion people. And the organization states that it is, quote, the collective voice of the Muslim world. And imagine that. Erdogan, who's got delusions of grandeur and wants to be the next caliph of the Muslim world, holds the chairmanship right now. One more point of intriguing interest. The parliamentary union of the OIC member states, in other words, its central governing board, has its head office, of all places, in Tehran. I hope you're beginning to see a little bit of the chess pieces on the board that are being moved around. Right now, Erdogan is chairing this Muslim organization, which is the largest organization in the world, second only to the UN. And by the way, they have representatives in the UN. Erdogan is chairing it, and the main governmental, what do they call it? The parliament of this thing, its head office is in Tehran. We are talking about the main Axis powers of the Magog Confederacy. And as I was looking at all this, and I was reading all the different news articles and things that were coming out of the OIC, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, I could not help. My heart, my mind, my spirit could not help but to go back and reflect on Psalm 83. What is Psalm 83? Let me quote it to you. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people. They've consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. They have said, come and let us cut them off, for they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy. Now, I looked that word up the other day because I wanted to make sure about something. They form a confederacy against you. Who does? I'm going to get back to that word confederacy in a minute. But the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Jebel, Ammon, and Amalek, with the inhabitants of Tyre, and Assyria has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. That's Psalm 83. They have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy. The word for confederacy in this portion of Scripture is berith. Berith is the word for covenant. They form a covenant against you. And that got me thinking on a little bit of a different wavelength as I as I've studied this psalm in the past. I always just locked my mind on the translation of confederacy, but they form a covenant against you. And who does this? The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Jordan, Moab and the Hagarites. That's the Sinai Peninsula. Hamas and ISIS right now. Hamas and ISIS affiliates are in the Sinai Peninsula. Jebel, Ammon, and Amalek, those are areas of ancient Syria. The inhabitants of Tyre, that's Lebanon, where we find Hezbollah. And Assyria. Well, ancient Assyria consisted of a large measure of modern-day Turkey. Assyria has also joined with them. So we're seeing all these nations that are surrounding Israel right now, with Assyria joining with them. Is this confederacy is the English translation, but they're forming a covenant, and I'm going somewhere with this, so stick with me here, folks, because this is going to be eye-opening. But out of this OIC summit yesterday, I drafted out some different quotes by people from these different nations. Mahmoud Abbas, during his speech to the emergency summit of the OIC the other day, accused Jews, quote, of faking history. Faking history in Jerusalem. He said on Wednesday, just yesterday, as he spoke, he said, "I don't." And this is so convoluted. He contradicted himself in his own statement. But it's so convoluted. He said yesterday, I don't want to discuss religion or history because they, meaning the Jews, are really excellent in faking and counterfeiting history. Really. But if we read the Torah, now remember, he said he didn't want to talk about religion or history, but then he goes, but if we read the Torah, it says that the Canaanites were there before the time of our prophet Abraham, and their Canaanite existence continued since that time. That is in the Torah itself. Then his speech took on an even more anti-Jewish tone. But if they would like to fake history, which they are really masters at doing, it is mentioned in the Holy Quran. They fabricate truth. And they try to do that, and they believe in that. But we have been there in that location for thousands of years. Now, the Palestinians are claiming that they are the ancestors of the ancient Canaanites. They really are not. There may be some kind of a Philistine connection. I don't want to digress. But here's the thing. Stupid is as stupid does. First, Mahmoud Abbas says he doesn't want to talk about religion and history. And then he goes to the Torah, mind you, to tell people that the Canaanites were there before the Jews. He wants to use the Torah to prove that the Palestinians preceded the Jews and that they were there for thousands of years before the Jews. But he conveniently forgets that part where God told Israel to drive the Canaanites out and possess the land. That's in the Torah too, Mr. Abbas. Hello? Nothing like arguing against yourself. I read his statements, and I'll be honest with you, I was just shaking my head. But moving right along, Jordan's King Abdullah at the OIC summit rejected any attempt to change the status of Jerusalem and its holy sites. King Abdullah said yesterday, all violence is a result of a failure to find a peaceful solution to the Palestinian issue. Well, blame that on Yasser Arafat. I told you last week, I'm going to keep bringing this up. You guys want to blame everybody but yourselves. It was Yasser Arafat that turned down the best deal he was ever going to get. It was Yasser Arafat in 2000 with Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak that turned down. Israel under Ehud Barak was giving East Jerusalem to the Palestinians, and they still rejected it. So blame Yasser Arafat. Don't blame Trump. Don't blame America. I don't want to get into all that. I did last week. But Jordan's king, Abdullah, it's his nation, it's his Hashemite dynasty that is the custodian of the Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem. And that's why they are particularly concerned about this. Now, remember what I said about Psalm 83. It's the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Jordan, and the Sinai Peninsula, Moab, and the Hagarites. And then, moving right along, it gets better. Iranian President Rouhani at the OIC called on Islamic states to join hands in opposing the dangerous move by the administration of Donald Trump. Rouhani warned the U.S. against relocating its Israel embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, saying it would be illegal. I don't know. It seems to me that every country in the world can claim what their capital is except Israel. But again, let me move on. Rouhani said, we believe the current conditions, all Islamic nations, listen to this, all Islamic nations must become united and take a serious step in countering this wrong, illegal, provocation, and gravely dangerous move. That was Iranian President Rouhani. Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme ruler of Iran, said this. The main issue is the issue of Al-Quds. They call Jerusalem Al-Quds. Another core issue is the issue of the first Qibla of Muslims, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That means it's their frontier mosque. These are both main issues. Our people love fighting the Zionists, and the Islamic Republic has proven this as well. By Allah's favor and grace, we have passed through the barrier. This is important, folks. Ayatollah Khamenei yesterday said, by Allah's favor and grace, we have passed through the barrier of denominational discord. He's setting something up here that I've been predicting for a long time. We've helped Hezbollah of Lebanon, which is a Shia group, in the same way that we've helped Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Those are Sunni groups. And I've been telling you for a long time now that the 10 toes of clay and iron in Daniel chapter 2 is representative of the last kingdom of Sunni and Shia. I can't get into all that right now, but it's lining up. And yesterday, Khamenei said, we will not become a prisoner of denominational limits. We do not differentiate between Shia, Sunni, Hanafi, and he goes on through some other smaller Islamic denominations. And there's some more, and I'm going somewhere with this. One more thing. Malaysia. The Malaysian defense minister says his armed forces are ready to help the Palestinians. Malaysia's defense minister, Hishmaduddin Tun Hussein, said that the Malaysian armed forces are ready to be sent to Jerusalem to assist the Palestinian cause if needed. Now, Malaysia is a Southeast Asian country. It's got one of the largest populations, Muslim populations in the world. But you know, we've been told for time immemorial that only the fundamentalist Muslims are in the Mideast, that all Muslims are moderate. We've been told in times past that Islam in Southeast Asia is different than Islam in the Mideast, that they are moderate. Southeast Asian Muslims aren't Islamic fundamentalists like Mideast Muslims. So we've been told. But now they were at the OIC and they're saying our armed forces are ready, definitely ready to take up arms against Israel. And then there's Erdogan. And he said yesterday, we recognize Jerusalem, and he's meaning the whole city, not just East Jerusalem. We recognize Jerusalem as the capital of occupied Palestine and call on the entire world to do the same. Now, I laid all that out, and I know it was probably a little bit lengthy. But here's where I'm going with this, because I have a bombshell report I'm going to share with you right now. Because some believe there is going to be a Psalm 83 war that is separate from the Ezekiel 38 Magog war, but I don't think that's right. It seems to me that Psalm 83 is the prophetic description of those nations forming their covenant of death and destruction against Israel. It is the creation of the alliance that will form the Magog Confederacy. And what just transpired yesterday in Turkey may well have been the fulfillment, or at least a fulfillment, if not the fulfillment, of Psalm 83, because the moving pieces of the chess game is to form a military alliance. And I want to share something with you right now out of a Turkish newspaper, the Turkish daily newspaper. Yeni Safik is the name of the paper. It means New Dawn. It is a conservative Turkish daily newspaper. The newspaper is known for its hardline support of President Erdogan, and in many ways, it's his mouthpiece. And I want you to understand, imagine this type of an article being in the New York Times or Newsday or the Washington Post. But the article here in Yeni Safik, Turkish newspaper, the headline, and I'm going to put this up on the Open Up the Doors page after the show. The headline, what if a Muslim army was established against Israel? Subtitled, if the member states of the OIC unite militarily, they will form the world's largest and most comprehensive army. I want to scat read through this article because it's mind-blowing, my friends. The world's largest army. This Turkish newspaper wrote this week, the OIC, as I shared a moment ago, is the second largest intergovernmental organization after the United Nations, with a membership of 50 states across 4 continents. The organization is the collective voice of the Muslim world and can sign military and economic sanctions. If the member states of the OIC unite militarily, they will form the world's largest and most comprehensive army, and who will be able to make war against the beast. I'm interjecting that. The number of active soldiers would be at least 5,206,100, while the defense budget would reach approximately $175 billion. Israel would be dwarfed by this Muslim army. I'm just reading right out of this article. The population of Israel, which is occupying Palestine, is 8.5 million. The population of Istanbul alone is over 14 million. There are 160,000 active soldiers in Israeli's forces, and their defense budget is 15.6 billion. The OIC, if we create a military confederacy, will dwarf Israel. And then he says Muslim countries can surround Israel. And they give a map here. They give a map of what they're looking to do. One of the decisions that could emerge from the OIC summit is to establish a Jerusalem duty group. Now, remember what I just said a moment ago, that Abbas was asking the UN to set up a different mechanism for the peace process? Here is what he's getting at. The OIC wants to go in and set up a police state, so to speak, in Jerusalem. The establishment of a possible Muslim army would ensure that Israel is militarily surrounded. Now, folks, this is a Turkish newspaper. Like I said, this isn't coming out of the National Enquirer or something here. The article goes on talking about the number of soldiers and how they could, basically choke out Israel. It's talking about the number of tanks and planes. I'm not going to read everything. I want to just read through some of this. Let's see here. Again, it's talking about the size of Turkey alone. And then there's this that Erdogan said in regards to this. President Erdogan is currently the term leader of the OIC, and he delivered a clear message regarding Jerusalem. Those who think Jerusalem belongs to them today will not find a tree to hide behind tomorrow. And he's quoting out of a hadith when he said that. Where did Erdogan get that idea from? It says in the Muslim hadith, the last hour, the Muslim apocalypse, will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree. And the tree would say, Muslim, the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him. We are seeing something historic going on, and most of us aren't even aware of it. I'm going to have more when I come back. I got to take a break. I know that block went long, but stick around, folks. I'll be back in a minute. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7, 93.3 in MP, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad, with a little bit of Sleigh Ride by jazz bass player Stu Ham. We've had a bit of a snowy, wintry day this morning. We woke up to a couple of inches of snow, and it was really cold and blustery this morning. And it felt like it was more of a early January day this morning than basically mid-December day. But it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, folks. And yes, indeed, it was I had to pull out the Stu Ham Sleigh Ride song for today, for a bumper there. That's a great tune. I should play the whole tune one of these days because it's a little bit long, but it's a great tune by Stu Ham. Now, I have to tell you, folks, I am lit with all that I'm seeing going on in the world around us, with all that I'm seeing about, as I shared in that first block, about God's chess pieces. God's the master chess player. And I'm excited about what's going on in the world. I can hardly contain myself because you know why? I am looking for my king. That's why. I'm not looking for doom and gloom, and I'm not looking for, and I know we're going to go through a lot of bad stuff. I know this world is going to go through a lot of bad stuff. But I'm not looking at the bad stuff. I'm looking for the city whose builder and maker is God. I'm looking for that heavenly Jerusalem that we're going to inhabit one day. Yes, it is the capital of Jerusalem. The existing Jerusalem is going to be the capital of Mashiach Sar Shalom, Jesus, the Prince of Peace, when he returns. It will be, and all the mockers and every knee shall bow before him in that day. But I want to tell you, I am looking for my blessed hope hope. That's why I'm excited. It's not about doom and gloom. It's not about looking at and saying, God, just judge this world, judge this world. Oh, this world's going to be judged. But that's not where my heart's at. My heart is at for the joy set before us, for the joy set before him. Jesus endured the cross because he knew what was going to be after the cross was eternal life, was resurrection from the dead. I'm looking for my blessed hope. That's why I'm excited about the geopolitical maneuverings of men and nations. Because as I say all the time, the geopolitical maneuverings of men and nations are nothing but the geoprophetical determinations of the living God. I'm not looking. I know I talk about these things a lot, but I'm not looking for the Antichrist. I'm looking for the Christ. Nevertheless, all things must be fulfilled that were written. A few weeks ago, Turkish President Erdogan said this, quote, "It is the Turkish nation's destiny to shoulder the burden of this entire geography, from the Balkans to the Caucasia and the Central Africa to the Central Asia. Geography is destiny, and we will not escape our destiny." I've been talking about Recep Tayyip Erdogan for a couple of years now. Most people are ignoring this guy. Most people back in the 20s and 30s ignored Hitler. Most people in the, and listen. I've said this many times. I am not saying, because I don't know yet, I am not saying that Erdogan is the Antichrist. Some people are actually saying that. But I'm not saying that. I'm not ready to cross that bridge yet. But I want to tell you something. This guy is certainly a good candidate. This guy has got delusions of grandeur. This guy wants to, as I've shared hundreds of times, he is the one who thinks he is the spokesman for the Muslim world. And right now he literally is, as the head of the OIC. He is the one who wants to go back to the glory days of the Ottoman Empire, a kingdom that has ceased to exist. The Bible tells us about a beast that was wounded and rises back up again. And Turkey has been building alliances. And over recent years, Turkey has developed strong ties with OIC member states. It has conducted military drills with neighboring Iraq. It has signed projects with Qatar and Somalia, among other Gulf and African countries. Why is that important? Because Ezekiel 38 and 39 tells us who are the nations in the Magog Confederacy. And the Magog Alliance includes Libya, Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia. Libya is stated by name. Cush is stated by name. But see, ancient Cush is the areas of Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia today. And what did Erdogan just say? Just a few weeks ago, it is Turkey's destiny. It is, because they are Magog. I don't know what kind of Bible knowledge or eschatological knowledge, he might have. He's a hardcore Islamist. But it's exciting to see the things that are happening, my friends. In Daniel 11, we see the rise of the king of the north, who is the Antichrist. In Daniel 11, we see how he wages war and how he comes to power. And we see a little bit of the description of the Antichrist. Again, the king of the north. Then, in Daniel chapter 12, sometimes I've often said that I don't like that they put chapter breaks sometimes where they put them, because it seems like it breaks up the normal continuity of what's being said. But in Daniel 11, we see the rise of the king of the north, and that king of the north comes against Israel. That king of the go and read it in Daniel chapter 11. But then in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, it says, in those days, Michael will stand up, the prince who watches over Israel. And Daniel says, there shall become a time like no other time, and it shall be the time of Jacob's trouble. It shall be a time of great tribulation. In Daniel 12, verse is 1. You know what? I'm going to turn there. I got a few minutes here because you got to see it's so laid out. The last day scenario, in a lot of ways, a lot of things are mysterious, I will grant you. But some other things are laid out pretty clearly. And in those days of the king of the north, it says in Daniel 12:1, at that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble. Jesus quoted this, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book of life, written in the book. I can't get into all that obviously right now. I've only got a few minutes left. But I want to lay this scenario out before you. You've got to go and read that article I posted on the Open Up the Doors Facebook page about a Muslim army. Because the map is there, and it's very clear what they were discussing and want to see come about from this OIC, this confederacy of nations that we see in Psalm 83. Israel may be forced. Well, we know Israel is going to make a covenant of peace with the Antichrist. They will be forced to. Israel will make a peace deal with the king of the north. Isaiah calls it a covenant with death. And God says it's going to be annulled. God says your agreement with Sheol will not stand in Isaiah 28:18. But Israel's going to be forced into making this peace deal because that article from the Turkish newspaper is quite right. In the natural, they're going to be so completely outgunned and outmanned and outmilitarized, they will see themselves forced to sign a peace deal. I have been predicting for over 5 years now that Turkey and NATO would part ways sooner or later, one way or another, because Erdogan wants to reestablish that Ottoman Empire. And as Iran fills in the vacuum left by ISIS in Iraq and Syria, continue to watch for that growing relationship between Erdogan's Turkey and the Ayatollah's Iran. Those are the main Axis powers. And remember what I just shared with this OIC. Look it up. Get on Google. Look up the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and where it's moving to. Its main office, its main parliamentary office is in Tehran. Its speaker right now, who's heading it up, is Erdogan. I'll share it again by way of reminder. Ayatollah Khamenei just said that they were going to lay aside their Shia-Sunni differences. The political machinations of men are nothing more or less than the prophetic purposes and determinations of the living God. And that is the reason, my friends, that is the reason I am so excited about the geopolitical situation. Because it's really about the geoprophetical. God is moving geoprophetically. Erdogan is calling for Muslim unity. President Rouhani is calling for Muslim unity. Ayatollah Khamenei is calling for Muslim unity. And what are they unified about? To destroy Israel. What is their unifying banner that they're gathering around? I'll read it again, Psalm 83. They have taken crafty counsel against your people. They have consulted together against your sheltered ones. That's what the OIC was doing this past week, consulting together. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. They have consulted together with one consent, and they form a covenant. They form a covenant against you. You see, those who form a covenant against Israel, God says, he who touches you touches the apple of my eye. He who touches you touches me. Psalm 83, my friends. I know I'm making a bold statement. I don't want to say this is that which was foretold of the prophets like Peter did when he stood up on the day of Pentecost, but I'm telling you, it's almost so obvious to me. The prophetic chess pieces are being set up on the chessboard just the way Almighty God wants them to be. And they're coming together. And they're calling for this unity. And that's why I'm excited. And that's why I'm praying that the things I'm sharing with you right now will be eye-opening to you. Especially for those who are prophecy watchers. Especially for those of you who are end-time watchers. We all should be. But you know, there's an old adage in chess. When in doubt, move a pawn. And it remains to be seen what kind of covenant or confederation comes out of the OIC covenant. But have no doubt, my friends, all the pawns are being moved into place. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I got to go, folks. It was great having you here with me this week. Thanks for joining in. Please share this. If you're on Facebook Live, please share this to your stream. I got to go. But have a great week, everybody, and I'll be back in the saddle again next week for the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. Open up the doors. Keep it right here on Faith FM. There's still some great Christian programming coming up. So don't change that dial. God bless everybody.